Hello, welcome to this video. So in this video I'm going to be doing a slight, hopefully mildly comedic, well not, like laugh out loud comedy, but fairly light-hearted reaction to a pseudoscience video I found. It's worth saying this is mainly to bring awareness about pseudoscience and to do it in a, more hopefully entertaining way than just going through the things to watch out for in certain videos, which will occasionally fling in cool sounding words. I'm doing this because this channel explores a lot of physics, and whilst whilst physics doesn't necessarily create pseudoscience, a lot of pseudoscience uses physics-sounding words. So, and this is very much a experimental video in that, I'm probably going to put this in a playlist, but I don't know if I'll create more in this playlist. I'll just see how it goes, in the future I'm planning to do, reaction videos to, more pseudoscience stuff, if this goes well. And I'm also planning to do a slight comedy series where essentially reacting in hopefully a fairly comic way to the science in Star Trek. If you've seen Star Trek before, you'll know that kind of they use a lot of science jargon quite randomly, like photon torpedoes, warp drives, so on and so forth. And hopefully at some point I'll do a playlist, kind of like, having a bit of a laugh, because the Star Trek is not made to be scientifically accurate, so we can just have a laugh with some of the hilarious dialogue that comes about when one truly understands what they're saying, because they use correct scientific terms just in a bizarre combination. And also at some point I may sprinkle into that playlist videos on the actual science behind things in Star Trek, such as talking about Kubier warp drives, which is a theoretical proposition for how you could get to macroscopic objects to move faster than light using warp drives in a way that is compatible with ideas in general relativity. So, it might be worth doing a playlist at some point. The difficulty with doing something like that, or at least making a playlist out of it, is the way scientific ideas are combined in Star Trek makes separating them out and, therefore going through the physics of what we can do and how that relates to Star Trek, or what we might be able to do in the future, rather challenging. But those are just some ideas for the channel. But anyway, this is a kind of light-hearted pseudo reaction to a video. It's worth saying that when I was watching the video on YouTube, when I was watching the video, I clicked play and I thought that the recording would record the video playing. I managed to record the audio, but sadly not the video playing itself, so I'll attach essentially screenshots of the relevant images to the next slide as I go through the video. So it's worth saying I'm going into this video fairly blind. I don't know what it's going to be exactly about, but well, it's got quantum physics explains in, so I reckon it's going to bring in quantum mechanics, or attempt to. And it seems to be about creating reality, so I suspect we're going to be bringing in to the video, ideas of collapse of the wave function, and how observation seems to affect the behaviour of quantum systems. But given we've got, a religious image present, and, this is, highly likely to be a pseudoscience video, so let's have a go watching. It's worth saying I haven't watched this video before, as in the video about to share. Yeah, I'm going in blind, so let's just have a go and see what we end up with to explore the fascinating world of pseudoscience. So, it's loading. That's the radio.
There's a sort of a philosophic concept that a sufficiently advanced civilization will be able to create a simulation. Maybe we're in the simulation. Have you thought about this?
A lot.
Okay.
Have you ever seen yourself through the eyes of someone else that you have become, and looked at yourself through the eyes of the ultimate observer?
Right, one thing I'm fascinated by, what do they mean, the ultimate observer? Like, I would like them to define exactly what the ultimate observer is. Who is this ultimate observer? One thing you'll find in pseudoscience is that they combine scientific words like observer and then add on things to make them sound more grand, like ultimate. But I immediately have no idea what this ultimate observer is. Maybe it's God or something, let's see.
Who are we? Where do we come from?
Good questions.
And what is our purpose in life?
Yep.
In a world full of endless possibilities, why do we keep creating the same realities? Isn't it amazing that we have so many options and potentials that exist, and yet we are unaware of them?
That's true. One of the things is there's so many possible realities, I mean, even if we try to explore everything we could, thanks to the probabilistic nature of quantum mechanics, at least as far as quantum phenomena is currently understood, that seems to be the case. There are so many things that could happen, which end up, at least in the branch of the wave function we end up observing, not happening.
Is it possible that we are so conditioned to our daily routines and the way we create our lives that we buy the idea that we have no control at all? We have been conditioned to believe that the external world is more real than the eternal world.
It depends what one means by more real. If one means more empirically verifiable, then I think it's fair to say that the external world is more real. But I don't think when people are talking about the reality that things like physics explore, that they mean that emotions or experiences are any less real. It's just we can't really assess the reality of internal experiences and exactly what those internal experiences are or their properties nearly as easily as we can assess the external world. You could also say that internal feelings and things are experiences of the external world and therefore perhaps are less real because they're experiences of something rather than things in and of themselves. Unless you think of feelings as kind of biochemical reactions, which one could do, in which case, that's just as real as any other external chemical reaction.
This new way of looking at science is just the opposite. It says that what's happening within us will create what's happening outside of us.
Right, I think when they say this new science, they're talking about, I think they think they're talking about quantum mechanics. We're saying quantum mechanics doesn't say that what's internal is more real than what's external. There is a bizarre process in quantum mechanics where a quantum system will change its behaviour if it is observed, indicating that there might be some relationship between consciousness and external reality, but whether there is a connection, and if so, what exactly about consciousness or the presence of an observer having, unobliterated information about a system, exactly what that means or what's going on there. But how the wave function collapses is very much something that is, it's so hard to answer that it's almost not being researched in the foundations of quantum mechanics. It is a bit, but physicists have mostly, for now at least, given up on that, and we're kind of mainly just hoping that quantum gravity will bring in some new insights that might help us. because at the moment we seem to be at a standstill, because no matter how you try to explain the collapse of the wave function, you seem to end up with a theory that has, problems. There's no majority agreement on a good theory. I mean, if you take the Copenhagen interpretation, well, it doesn't explain the collapse of the wave function, it just postulates it happens, and that seems rather absurd that observation should change the dynamics of a system without there being some underlying mechanism. If you take the many worlds interpretation, when you have to buy into the idea of parallel universes, and well, that's not aesthetically very pleasing to have lots of parallel universes that you can't possibly enter in one's model of our universe. And then there are other suggestions as well, but, quantum mechanics, as far as the theory is well constructed and well understood, just postulates there is something that is like or mathematically equivalent to the collapse of the wave function. It most definitely doesn't say that the internal reality is any more real than the external reality. In fact, most physicists would argue that quantum mechanics has nothing to do with an internal reality at all, apart from having something indirectly to do with it, possibly through the nature of observation.
Consciousness creates reality.
No. Well, at least not according to quantum mechanics. Even if you buy into the idea that it is observation inherently that results in the collapse of the wave function, well, the wave function has to be there to collapse before the object is observed. Otherwise, it doesn't have a wave function that observation can cause to collapse. So clearly there has to be a reality before observation. It's just observation impacts the evolution of a system and therefore possibly future reality. It doesn't create reality.
This statement has changed the scientific, medical landscape, and alternative media outlets around the world.
Well, I mean, if we found that consciousness created reality, that would definitely be very transformative and possibly very worrying, but rest assured we haven't.
Countless scientists study this idea and how it might be correlated with the nature of our reality. It raises the question, what is consciousness?
Now, to be fair, whether consciousness, as I say, has something to do with the collapse of a wave function is something that you can explore, and do so, very legitimately using very strong logic and very strong science. But to claim that consciousness creates reality, I think, is a step too far.
Consciousness includes a number of things. It's how we perceive our world. It's our thoughts and intentions.
Good summary.
It's being aware and so much more.
Yeah.
Looking for consciousness in the brain is like looking for the radio announcer.
Okay. I don't know what it's like looking for a radio announcer, but there we are.
The notion that consciousness creates reality raises so many questions.
Yes, I mean, one question I immediately have is, does it? But yes, I mean, if it did, it definitely would, but, well, I mean, we've gone this far with the video, let's keep going and see where we end up. Right now we're already departing significantly from mainstream science.
Does this mean we as individuals, and on a collective level, as one human race, can shape and create whatever reality we'd like for ourselves?
Whoa, wait, no. According to quantum mechanics, even if you suggest that consciousness creates a reality, and the collapse of a wave function is somehow the creation of reality, then you still can't get any reality you want, because there are physical principles limiting the states a wave function can collapse into, based upon the physics of that system. For example, if you have an electron in an atom, the wave function might collapse such that when you observe where the electron is in a particular energy level, but it has to be one out of a discrete set of energy levels. It can't just be in, any energy state it likes.
Does it mean we can manifest a certain lifestyle?
Worth saying, quantum mechanics has not been developed to the point where we can apply it to entire lifestyles. At the moment we're still working with, how quantum mechanics works in a biological environment where it's quite busy, but we're still at the, molecular level where we're worrying about things. We haven't quite got to macroscopic objects properly, or definitely things like entire life cycle. Life cycle. Lifestyle is yet. Too much astrophysics.
Track certain experiences. Does it happen instantly, or does it take time?
Now that's an interesting point, because according to the Copenhagen interpretation, the collapse of the wave function is instantaneous. But then there are other approaches that suggest that the collapse of the wave function does occur over a time period. I'm quite fond of those, because if you allow it to occur over a time period, then you can kind of have more well-understood mechanisms possibly at play, because we don't have many mechanisms for things like instantaneous processes.
And how do we do it? We know so little still, although we might be able to answer these questions with scientific certainty. We do know that yes, a correlation between consciousness and our physical material world does indeed exist in some way.
Well, we don't really know that. We know that there's a correlation between observation and the physical world, or at least the future states of the physical world. We don't know whether there's a correlation between consciousness and the physical world. Although I suppose, because when we observe things, we're generally conscious of it, maybe, but it's still implying consciousness instead of observation, and that's, important to make a distinction.
The extent of that correlation is still poorly understood, but we know it's there, and we know that it must have some sort of significance. Asking yourself these deeper questions opens up new ways of being in the world. The real trick to life is not to be in the know, but to be in the mystery.
Yeah, good to explore the mystery.
I regard consciousness as fundamental. I regard matter as derivative from consciousness. We cannot get behind consciousness. Everything that we talk about, everything that we regard as existing, postulates consciousness.
Now, we're saying that quote that, the notion that consciousness is fundamental, I don't think the scientific community at large has any problem with. Where the pseudoscience in this video is saying that quantum mechanics almost inevitably implies, seemingly according to this video, that there's a link between creation of reality and consciousness through quantum mechanics. But the notion that consciousness might be fundamental, although I guess we know quantum mechanics is pretty fundamental anyway. But the notion that consciousness is fundamental is a view which, when brought in a literal sense, is called panpsychism. That's the view that objects have an inherent property, even objects we consider not being as conscious, as actually having some amount of consciousness, so even fundamental particles. Now, panpsychism is, at least if it's practically useful, then to be practical theory, it would lead to certain things which we can pretty much rule out. And the way we rule them out is mainly going, well, based on one, experimental observations directly, two, on the maths of the theories which predict those experimental observations, it seems one electron is indistinguishable from another, indicating that we know that we know that those two particles can't, differ based on having different consciousnesses. And we understand electrons so well that there's no room in our model for them to have another fundamental property like consciousness. Because if they had another fundamental property, that would affect what should happen in our mathematical predictions.
According to R.C. Henry, a professor of physics and astronomy at Johns Hopkins University, in a 2005 essay, a fundamental conclusion of the new physics also acknowledges that the observer creates the reality.
Observer creates the reality? Well, I mean, I don't know, that might be taken slightly out of context. Again, depends what you mean by create reality. It's worth saying often in pseudoscience videos they use quotes, but quotes in context have a very specific meaning. And if you were going to do, like say write a chapter in a book on Copenhagen interpretation and with a quote like something like, consciousness creates reality, it'd be clear what that would mean. But I think here that quote is being used in a slightly incorrect context, for this video.
As observers, we are personally involved with the creation of our reality. Physicists are being forced to admit that the universe is a mental construction.
Whoa, no. Physicists are not being forced to commit that the universe is a mental construction. No. Observation affects the future evolution of the universe, and observation may have as an integral part of it consciousness. And in that way consciousness may affect the future evolution of the universe, but to create the external universe? No, we're definitely not being forced to admit anything about consciousness. You can rephrase the Copenhagen interpretation in terms of consciousness if one wants, but no one is being forced to say anything about consciousness at this point because we just don't understand enough about it.
Pioneering physicist Sir James Jeans wrote, "A stream of knowledge is headed toward a non-mechanical reality."
A non-mechanical reality, I think that means like non-deterministic, and that whereas Newton's laws and even in chaos physics, systems are deterministic, and that if you know the exact initial conditions, it's assumed that there are physical principles at play that will allow you to predict with certainty the outcome. Whereas that's not the case in quantum mechanics. So yeah, the universe is mechanical, if by that we mean it's probabilistic.
The universe begins to look more like a great thought than like a great machine. The mind no longer appears to be an accidental intruder into the realm of matter. We ought rather to hail it as the creator and governor of the realm of matter. Get over it and accept it. The inarguable conclusion. The universe is...
Well, if anybody ever says something is inarguable, major red flag, everything is arguable. Even everything on this channel, everything you've learnt in school, at least when it comes to the fundamental physics of the universe, is questionable. I mean, there was a time, for example, when we believed, most physicists were convinced Newton's laws were definitely true. And then came along quantum mechanics and also general relativity, and now we realise they're very wrong in very many ways. And the stuff I believe to be true, or at least seems to be consistent with experiments currently as far as I'm aware, is, to be honest, probably false, at some level, as some future experiment will probably find. So, never just accept something and never take anything as the absolute truth in science if we're talking about the fundamental nature of reality, because ultimately we can't do every single test possible, we can't explore everything that can possibly be explored, and therefore there's always a chance that what we have is a model which works well in some cases, but in others will just fall apart.
Is immaterial, mental, and spiritual. The
What does
science behind the
spiritual mean?
statement, consciousness creates reality. The quantum double slit experiment is
Ah, now we get onto core experiment, so let's hear them go through this.
one way we can see how consciousness affects the physical material world. One potential revelation of this experience is that the observer.
So here you can see the diffraction patterns. And these represent wave fronts of the wave function. I'm assuming they're talking about matter particles, but they could be talking about sending single photons one at a time through these double slits. And these wave function wavefronts interfere with each other and produce an interference pattern. And it's this that kind of tells you, well, in some sense, the particle has to go through both slits and kind of interfere with itself. However, when you try to measure what slit it's gone through before it reaches the screen, the other side of the slits, the particle stops having a wave function associated with a wave and has a wave function associated with the particle having gone through just one of the slits. But you don't know which slits you'll find the particle having gone through, hence the idea of quantum mechanics being probabilistic.
Creates the reality. In this experiment, scientists use a double-slit optical system to test the possible role of consciousness in the.
It's not really the role of consciousness in this case, at least. It's the role of a fluorescent screen which glows brightly when it's struck by a particle. And so you can use the screen to determine where the particle has landed. And if you send enough if you do the experiment enough times to build up enough dots on the fluorescent screen, you'll see an interference pattern build up.
Collapse of the quantum wave function. They had predicted that the ratio of the interference patterns, double slit, spectral power, to its single slit, spectral power, would decrease when attention was focused towards the double slit as compared to away from it, yet found that factors associated with consciousness significantly correlated in predicted ways with perturbations in the double slit interference pattern.
What?
In other words,
okay, right, I'm really confused with what they said there. Perturbation? Consciousness? I mean, if it's so confusing, I have to give myself a moment. Perturbation is essentially some kind of framework that you build up where you solve a set of equations approximately using analytical methods, so using pen and paper. So perturbation theory, for example, you would do if that's, say, you were looking at the motion of the Earth around the Sun, but you wanted to take into account what small effect would the Moon have on the Earth's motion, because the Moon has a tiny tug on Earth compared to the Sun, so you would use perturbation theory to deal with that. You also use it in quantum mechanics. Let's say, if you've got a particle which is experiencing some dominant force, but you then put the particle in a weak electric field, so there's an additional small potential. You'll use perturbation theory there to work out what will the particle do, what will its energy levels be, what will its possible classical states we can find it in be, so on and so forth. Although we don't understand consciousness mathematically well enough to even write down equations in a non-perturbed regime for consciousness, i.e. when we can solve the equations exactly, let alone build up a perturbation theory for consciousness. Yeah.
Scientists affected the results of the experiment simply by observing it. Observation not only disturbs what has to be measured, they produce it. We compel the electron to assume a definite.
We compel the electron. Compel the electron. What? We don't. Even if we were going to cause the electron to do something by consciousness somehow, we couldn't do it by compulsion? What? Makes it sound like electrons can feel things. Compulsion. No. And also one thing is you can't really use modern science to understand how the electron goes about developing a wave function, allowing it in some sense to pass through both slits at the same time whilst it's not being observed, because this only happens whilst it's not being observed. So we can't possibly observe what it's doing at this point. And the idea of the electron having a wave function and then the wave fronts kind of diffracting and interfering with each other, all of this is just a mathematical procedure we apply given kind of physical and geometric description to allow us to predict what we'll actually observe, i.e. the pattern we'll see on the fluorescent screen. We can't actually directly measure the electron doing this process. And it's as in, gaining a wave function and then that wave function diffracting and interfering with itself. It's part of the thing that makes quantum mechanics so challenging at a fundamental level to understand, is that observation interrupts natural quantum evolution. So we don't really know what the electron is doing between where it's emitted from and the fluorescent screen. The notion of a wave function is really just a visual way to get ultimately a result, although we're still debating about in the physics community the actual physical processes that are happening and what on earth the electron is doing between being emitted from a cathode ray or whatever is emitting it and our fluorescent screen.
In a position, we ourselves produce the results of the experiment. Although this is one of the most popular experiments used to posit the connection between consciousness and physical reality, there are several other studies that clearly shows that consciousness, or factors that are associated with consciousness, directly affect our reality.
What's going
A
on?
number of experiments in the field of parapsychology.
Parapsychology. I'm not a psychologist, so any psychologist out there, please let me know whether there's something called parapsychology.
Also demonstrated this. Sure, we might not understand the extent of this connection, and in most cases, scientists can't even explain it. However, they are and have been observed time and time again. How can we incorporate this information into our daily lives and use consciousness to transform the world? Change requires action, but the place within ourselves that we take action from makes a big difference in the outcome.
Possibly, depending on what's going on.
Modern-day science, especially quantum physics, has been catching up to ancient mysticism.
Quantum mechanics has not been going anywhere near ancient mysticism, at least in the mainstream. It's worth saying I might, as I'm doing this video, make it sound like I'm, against spirituality or religion. I'm not. I mean, I'm personally religious, so, I have no problem with spirituality or religion, but I try to keep religion separate from scientific research, because the thing is, you have to approach scientific research on the merits of science and what science can do. And science can't probe ancient mysticism, most definitely.
And concepts deeply ingrained in various cultures throughout the ancient world.
Well, they had interesting ideas and
one
very
great
intelligent.
Example of this is the fact that everything is energy.
Whoa! Here we get another gem. Shall we say for this video? So everything is energy? Well, it depends what you mean by energy. Every matter and bit of radiation has energy associated with it. Mass can be converted into energy, but everything is energy. That's kind of really just like saying everything is stuff, to be honest. It's like, well, yeah, but I mean, not in any meaningful way. I mean, I say not in a meaningful way. You can you could convert everything back into energy if you wanted, and therefore just have lots of radiation. Like if you want, I don't think it's going to happen, but I suppose in principle it's possible that, your laptop might suddenly burst into a shower of high energy photons. But, and photons are like excitations of the electromagnetic quantum field, and therefore, I suppose energy, but, I mean, energy is so vague in the way it's used here. I'm not sure what is being meant, because, a photon, for example, is very, very different to a laptop, so I don't know what's being meant.
And nothing is solid.
Nothing is solid. Things are solid in the way that we define matter and states of matter, in that, solid is defined as an object where the particles have a regular arrangement and the particles are tightly bound such that, the particles can't stop roaming around the object. I think what the person in this video means is that there is lots of empty space, and it's indeed true that if you look at kind of the density of an atom, it's much less dense than the nucleus, and that's often interpreted as there's lots of empty space between the orbiting electrons and the nucleus. But we know quantum mechanically that electrons in an atom don't behave as point particles. So really the electrons are in a sense distributed all across the whole atom. They're smeared across the whole atom, and when thinking of it like this, they form kind of a charge cloud, meaning there's no empty space in the atom. It's just most of the atom has a very, very low density associated with the electrons being distributed across a comparably large volume compared to the nucleus, at least.
We are what we think.
We are what we... Well, I mean, in a sense, I suppose, with behaviour and stuff, but, a bit of a leap from talking about energy.
All that we are arises with our thoughts.
Oh,
with our thoughts,
okay.
we make the world.
Yeah, that's a really good quote.
Broadly
I like that.
speaking,
That's good.
although there are some differences, I think Buddhist philosophy
Yeah.
and quantum mechanics...
Whoa! Buddhist philosophy, amazing. I love Buddhist philosophy. I mean, I don't know much, but what I do know, I think it's brilliant. And I wrote a book which has some Buddhist philosophy as themes in it. So Buddhist philosophy, amazing. Quantum mechanics, amazing. But there is no well-established quantum physics within the scientific community which uses principles in Buddhist philosophy. I mean, quantum mechanics may be compatible with Buddhist philosophy, perhaps, but yeah, if you look at the axioms of standard quantum mechanics, you won't find Buddhist philosophy there.
Can shake hands on their view of the world.
Yeah, possibly. Great, yeah,
We can see in
yeah.
these great examples the fruits of human thinking, regardless of the admiration we feel for these great thinkers.
Yeah.
We should not lose sight of the fact that they were human beings,
Yeah.
just as we are.
I think
A
that's
great
an amazing
example of
point.
quantum physics.
Exactly. They're humans, so it's the kind of thing where you should always question what anyone is saying. You should always question anything you read in a textbook. You should always question what you read online. You should question what I'm saying. It's important to always question and bear in mind that, if you read, no matter what you're reading, it is written by a human. Or now in the day of AI, it might be written by an AI, but the AI has been programmed by a human. So, and humans can make mistakes, and humans can have gaps in their logic and inconsistencies, so it's always worth bearing that in mind.
Meeting ancient wisdom can be seen in the fact that Nikola Tesla was influenced by the Vedic philosophy when pondering his ideas of zero-point energy.
What?
So why is this relevant?
Well, I mean, he might be, I'm not sure if he's influenced, I can't comment on that, but if he was influenced, then that doesn't mean that there's a link between the two in terms of how the physics of the thing of stuff works. It's I mean, for example, Einstein was encouraged by his personal views on how the universe should evolve to introduce a constant called the cosmological constant into his field equations, which in the case of cosmology has actually turned out to be a very important constant. But it doesn't mean that Einstein's personal beliefs on how the universe should evolve from, for reasons that weren't particularly scientific, are the basis of the scientific use of the cosmological constant. We use the cosmological constant because later observation evidence, independent of Einstein's own, desires for there to be or not to be a cosmological constant, later evidence showed we need it.
Because new physics is finally discovering that the observer shapes the reality.
I think now we're leaping back. Now this video is already slightly long, it's over 40 minutes, so I think I'll pause there. But I thought it was worth doing a reaction video to something in pseudoscience, because there's lots of videos, particularly now we're in the day of YouTube and social media of pseudoscience, so I thought it was worth reacting to one at least, particularly as we cover the kind of material from which words are often hijacked in these kind of pseudoscience videos. So a bit different video to normal, but being a channel that talks about this channel talking a lot about physics, I feel almost morally obliged to have at least one video where I try as much as I can to disentangle quantum mechanics, which we cover on this channel, from pseudoscience. But it's worth saying that pseudoscience videos do often have very good tips on things like mental well-being, on things like your thoughts impact your actions, and therefore it's important to look after your mind because that will help you have as positive a day as possible. So there's a lot of good things in these videos. The artistry in these videos is phenomenal. The music is often very relaxing. Not so much in this video, but in most videos there's a beautiful soundtrack. There's a lot of wonderful things about videos on pseudoscience, but not necessarily their use of ideas or terms in quantum mechanics. So I thought it was worth doing a reaction video there. We're saying this is a light-hearted video, so obviously, please don't go to the channel where the video I'm reacting to is from, and start essentially filling their comment section with comments about the technicalities of quantum mechanics or anything. I say that just to be clear that this video is light-hearted, and it's really about trying to discuss pseudoscience in a direct but hopefully fairly entertaining way. Well, more entertaining than just to hear me list things to watch out for in pseudoscience videos. But anyway, so that's everything for this video. I might make a playlist reacting more comically to Star Trek videos at some point, but I hope you enjoyed this video, and hopefully see you for more soon.